I love baseball cards. Got 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em, need 'em, got 'em, need 'em.
Welcome to another episode of Remember the Great Sports. This is going to be another pickups video. But to give you a little background on where I got the cards, that's kind of a useful tip to some of the hunters and the collectors that are out there. Flea markets, antique malls, whatever you would like to call them, that is sometimes an untapped market, but also sometimes it can be a crapshoot, meaning you can go into a 400 booth antique mall, for example, or flea market, whatever, and the only sports cards or memorabilia you find there are 90s junk wax. Now, in particular, I had been watching this guy's booth for quite some time, and when my wife and I have gone to the antique mall, I look at his booth, behind the glass case, and I'm like, oh, do I want to buy that? Do I not want to buy it? And I've been on the fence back and forth. Well, yesterday I finally went there, and it was on Valentine's Day, and I called my wife up on the phone and I said, hey, I know it's Valentine's Day. You said I could go pick something out. What do you think of me buying those cards that we saw, 3-4 months ago at the antique mall? And she's like, well, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. My wife, of course, had a Valentine's Day gift waiting for me when I got home, so I'm going to share that with you in all seriousness. I'm not going to show you the Valentine's Day, but she put a nice little note on here. But this is what was waiting for me, which just struck a chord in my heart, and that is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Valentine's Day candy kit. I just laughed when I saw this sitting on my kitchen counter when I came in the door. I was like, dear, you know me so well. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and Ninja Turtles were huge to me and my friends. And we're talking Generation 1, not, the current cartoon. I've never even seen it, to be honest with you. And my wife got that for me, and I just thought I'd throw that in the video, telling you how much I really appreciate that. So, getting back to what we're talking about. I found 4 cards at this flea market, and the prices I just couldn't beat or resist. There are some price tags on here, but at the very end of the transaction, there was an additional 30% off taking off of this total amount for these cards. This person was having a sale in their booth, everything 30% off if you pay cash. So I scrounged up the cash that I had in my wallet, and I came up with the money needed to pay for these, and I left a couple there that probably could have bought also. So here are the 4 that I found. Again, this was the overall price. Then I got a 30% discount on that. And the first one is a Salvador Perez 9 2010 Bowman Chrome. And if you see the price tag on there, I only paid $6. Now, Perez, I feel, is a very underrated catcher. I think because of where he plays, the market he's in, Kansas City, he gets overshadowed quite often. Obviously, when the Royals won the World Series a few years ago, that put him on the main stage for collectors. But at $6 for a mint 9 on his best rookie, I couldn't pass that up. Very happy to have that Salvi Perez in the collection. Now the next one, I know there's some Rockies fans out there that watch my channel, and then I'm also subscribed to their channel, and they're going to like this one, is I found a 1993 Topps Traded Todd Helton for $5.95. Now I don't know why that was 5 cents cheaper. I don't know the criteria of the pricing of this individual's booth, but I guess they didn't want the extra nickel, because I probably would have gave it to them if they wanted it that badly for $6. It's not a mint 9. It's not a sharp perfect Tim Gem Mint 10. but I did not have this card in my collection, so I was happy to add it to my collection. Again, I've alluded to in some of my videos that I'm not about getting cards graded. But in this instance, when the deal's right in my face and I can't pass it up, I usually buy graded cards. Again, didn't have this Team USA Helton. Actually, let me rephrase that. I might have the entire set factory sealed, but I'm one of those people that I don't open my factory set. If I have the whole factory set, I just leave it as is, because to me that's a Gem Mint 10, right? Aside from a printing flaw or something along those lines. I've often, I don't get submissions. I don't do submissions. I know they do submissions in person at some of the larger card shows. But have any of you ever thought of bringing a factory set with you to a card show and saying, hey, you know, go ahead and open it and pull the card out. How else could it be other than a Gem Mint 10? I mean, I'm just throwing that comment out there. You know, aside from a miscut or something like that, but if the person from PSA or whoever sees you open the set literally right in front of them, you know, and handle with care, like you wear gloves, you're, you know, really careful with that. You know, say for example you have a 93 SP factory set, upper deck. I mean, would it be worth it to say, hey, Beckett, can I literally open this right in front of you? Then you see that I pull it out of the, you know, out of the factory sealed box. I mean, would that help improve my odds? Again, I'm not involved in the grading circuit. I don't know if that is crossing the line when you're trying to get your items graded or whatever, but you know, it's just a theory from being an old collector like myself. In the 80s and 90s, you know, factory sets were probably pushed down the consumer's throat more than any other time period. I mean, they're not now, but when I was growing up as a kid, you know, it's like, oh, you know, if you buy the Topps factory set, you'll have every card in the set, and you're sitting on a gold mine, and blah blah blah. Obviously, we know that didn't work out so well for anybody that bought sets from, you know, the mid 80s to, you know, current basically. So just throwing those comments out there with PSA, Beckett grading, you know, other agencies grading, you know, literally bring the factory set with you. Say, here's an 89 upper deck factory set. Pull the Griffey out. Wouldn't that be a Gem Mint 10? You know, aside from some printing flaws, I mean, I know printing flaws happen, especially in the 80s, so in the early 90s, so I understand that, but like if everything is perfectly centered, everything is, you know, right, fresh out of the factory box, I wouldn't see how that couldn't be a Gem Mint 10. But that's just my opinion. So moving on, this is again a rookie card that I did not have. I try to grow my football collection a little bit day by day. Well, not day by day, but when I see a deal in front of my face, I usually know, you know, what's good and what's not. I mean, for example, I try not to buy early 90s, you know, like a Junior Seau rookie card, because I have 15 of those probably, you know, ungraded in my collection already. That may be an exaggeration, but, you know, any of the Pro Set era sets, you know, everybody knows Pro Set from the early 90s. I mean, even though there were some superb rookies like Barry Sanders, you know, Deion Sanders, Chris Carter, you know, on down the list, because they mass produce so many of those cards, they're pretty much, you know, I don't want to say worthless, but they're not premium like some of the earlier mid 80s Topps issues. With that said, I found a 1984 Eric Dickerson 8, PSA 8, and that was priced at $12.95. Again, he didn't want his extra nickel, so I took it for $12.95 and was very happy to do so. This is a card that I had my eye on for months. I saw this in the display case, you know, probably 6 months ago, and my wife and I, you know, she gets mad when I go to this antique mall because I'll spend like 20 minutes just looking at one guy's glass display case. I can't get in the display case. I'm just talking about before I even open the case. I'm standing there looking at all the stuffs, you know, looking for the nooks and crannies of, you know, what's behind the door, so to speak. And then finally, when I find somebody to help me, get into the case, I spend another 20 minutes there, and she's infuriated with me by the time I'm finished at this one booth, because I've been standing there for 30 or 40 minutes just going through cards. And yesterday I was able to go by myself to the antique mall, so I could spend as much time as I wanted without my significant other pressuring me to go through stuff. So very happy to add an '84 Dickerson rookie card to the collection. I don't typically buy PSA graded stuff, but at that price, that's staring me right in the face saying, buy me, buy me. I just couldn't pass it up. So happy to add that to the collection. Now this final one, I almost bought before this happened. This has, again, been in this guy's booth for 6 months, or more. It might have been there 2 years for all I know. But I noticed it about 6 months ago, and I only go to this antique mall once every couple months at most. The area I live in, antique mall, flea markets, I would say there's probably 15. And that's being generous in the metropolitan area that I live in. And the thing that I've learned, unfortunately, not the case with these guys, or these cards, was if you see something, you probably should buy it, because odds are it's not going to be there the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. For whatever reason, this guy has fair prices on stuff, and I don't know, because if this is such a massive, massive antique mall, we're talking like 250 to 300 vendors, give or take, and maybe even more than that. So when you go to a place like that, you have a lot of shoppers, competing for one person's dollar, so to speak. And sometimes too big is too big, in my opinion. I'd rather go to a small antique mall that has maybe 30 to 40 vendors, and there might be a card person and 2 of those 40 vendors. To me, that's easier, more manageable. If you have people that are out in the wild hunting for sports memorabilia and cards, I feel that you have a better opportunity to sell to them. And obviously location has a lot to do with it. As they say in business, location, location, location. So finally, the last card that I got was a 78 rookie Paul Molitor Alan Trammell. And there are some very obvious issues. There's like a printing flaw right there at the bottom, but I can't believe they gave it a 7, to be honest with you, because, maybe they overlooked that flaw, but I'm not going to complain. Anyways, the price was $29.95. I was on the fence about buying this for a long, long time, but when the announcement came that Alan Trammell also joined the Hall of Fame, I thought about this. This is one of those things that you lay in bed at night and you're like, man, I should have bought that. Man, if I go back there, I'm going to buy that. I'm going to buy that. I'm sure many of you collectors can relate to those thoughts. And I went in yesterday on Valentine's Day. It was still there at $29.95, and I thought, with both of those guys Hall of Famers now, I'm going to buy these. In closing, if you did the math there really quickly in your head, all of those added up together, I got a 30% off. Now, if you factor in that I paid, 8 to 9 cents on the dollar in sales tax, that jumped up the price, a little bit higher. But, unless you're buying on eBay at this point in time or whatever, you don't have to pay sales tax. But in a retail establishment, there's no way around Uncle Sam's cut. So had to pay tax on that, which, bumped it back up a little bit. But, when you factor in 30% off, if you want to say that I paid 10% in tax, I don't even know without looking at the receipt. But let's say I paid 10% in tax, well, they were 20% off, if you want to look at it that way. So out the door, it came out to be about roughly over $40 for all of them. So I thought that was a very fair price. If you look at a little over $40 for all of them, once you factor in submission price to Beckett or PSA, once you factor in purchasing the raw card itself, I don't think you could buy these cards and submit them for under $40. I mean, maybe you could. Maybe if you're a very good trader, or if you're find stuff, diamonds in the rough, sniffing them out in the wild or at card shows or whatever. Adding together $40 to submit these to PSA or Beckett and get them back in the grade that I got them in, is probably slim to, slim chance of that happening. And again, I think they were very generous with this 7 on this Molitor and Trammell rookie. I mean, to me, you can clearly see the smudge or print smudge or whatever you want to call that right down there at the bottom. So I'm not complaining. I'll take a 7. Obviously a 10 would be better, but or even a 9. But I feel that all of these are only going to go up in value. I mean, Helton, if he gets in the Hall of Fame, will obviously go up. And I think Salvador Perez, before it's all said and done, if he continues on the trajectory that he's on, he might be a Hall of Famer someday. So he's already got the World Series title under his belt, so he is a winner. People in Kansas City love him to death. I mean, he is, like I said, the anchor to me of that Royals team right now. Next to Alex Gordon, I feel that Perez is probably the mainstay on the Royals now. And the thing that I want to share with some of the young collectors out there is, antique malls, flea markets, they can be a good resource sometimes, but for the gems that you do find, you can waste a lot of time not finding anything. So thanks for watching, and I hope you like this pickups video, and stay tuned for more in the future. Thanks.